Pregame.com.
Betting NFL props. I'm Marco D'Angelo. I'm joined with Bryan Leonard. We're going to talk about other ways that you can make money on betting football, the NFL playoff games. And Bryan, I'm going to be honest with you. I just moved to Vegas 4 years ago. So my betting consisted back in Pittsburgh, the back room of the pizza shop and what we did online. And the only time you ever saw props back in the day was the Super Bowl. Now, this is big, this is big business for a sharp bettor. And, you've opened my eyes to, some things at, the Tuesday meeting, different ways, that guys can extract value. Let's put it that way. So why don't you go ahead? I'll let you take the lead and I'll counterpunch you.
All right. We're down to 3 games left in the NFL season, and there are far more props for the Super Bowl than there will be for these championship games, but there will be props for these championship games. So I'll be honest with you, last year in the Super Bowl, I didn't have a bet on the Super Bowl. I had 120 bets on the Super Bowl. I had props coming out of, I had props. 120 bets on the Super Bowl. And
how did you keep track watching when you're watching the game, take us through.
You cannot have enjoyment at all watching a football game when you bet the props, because 1 minute I'm rooting for one thing to happen, and then if I've lost it, I turn around and I'm rooting for something totally different on the next play, and it's just driving the people I'm with crazy. And I've got my little sheet, and I'm going down, lost that one, oh, that one won, that one's looking good. But it's amazing, and after 120 bets, I broke completely even. Everything that I had...
that is the ultimate gambler's dream. How we always say at the end, whenever they put us in a grave, I just want to say, I broke even.
You broke even. now, the good thing is, 2 years ago, I won 24 net units of my bets from the props. So
props to you, my man.
Thank you very much. But last year, the way I thought the game was going to play out, it did not play out. And so the worst thing happened, and I still broke even, which tells you why you can make money playing these props. Now, to be honest with you, I'm not going to go into a lot of specifics here because I haven't bet the props yet. The props aren't out yet. So I'm not going to tell people what to bet here because I don't want them taking my number. And the liquidity here in prop betting is very small. So where I could talk about a game in the NFL where the line is 3, knowing I could get every bet I want in around the world and we could all do it, and it's not going to move the line, one bet on a prop at the max at one of these places is enough to move the line, and the maxes aren't even high. A lot of these places, they'll let you bet $500, and that's about it. So I'm not going to give away any secrets, but I'm just letting you know there's a lot of different ways to play these games other than lines. If you think the lines are tight and you don't want to play a teaser because the numbers aren't covering the key numbers, you just play the props.
Speaking of teasers, I talked with, when we did the videos last week with RJ, and I told him how Vegas casinos will change their limits in the playoffs on teasers because they feel more exposed because the lines are tighter in it. And he kind of looked at me like I was crazy. And I was telling you yesterday, Leroy's didn't even take teasers, for the games last week.
In retrospect, I bet you they would have, because everybody would have been on the Wong teaser, which is, there's an author of a book, Stanford Wong, and he said the only profitable way to play teasers is going through the key numbers of 3, 4, 6, and 7, which is what I used. I was 4-0 on teasers for the season, then I win Baltimore, lose the Packers. So I lost my first teaser of the season.
But what they don't like to see happen, though, is what happened in the Baltimore game. That's the book's nightmare with the teasers, is no matter what you did on a teaser in that Baltimore game, you had a winner. The game, if you teased Baltimore down, if you teased Houston up, if you teased the over down, or you teased the under up, all 4 combinations were winners. And that happens a lot in the playoffs because the lines, as you said, there's the teams get better the further you go into the playoffs, so there's not going to be as much variance. The lines, everybody knows everything there's possibly to know about the 2 teams that are playing. So, unless you get a game where there's a lot of turnovers and the game becomes, skewed how it plays out, the teasers are generally profitable in the playoffs, and they don't want that exposure. But I could see putting limits up, but to not let your customers bet it,
Yeah, it gives your book a bad name. It gets around if that thing happens. There's one book in Vegas here that they've got a law. We're getting a little bit off track here, but I just wanted to point this out. They've got a law with the IRS that if you cash in $10,000 worth of tickets, so basically if you bet a game for $5,500 and you win it, you're getting paid $10,500. Well, you go back and the IRS makes you fill out a form if you have $10,000. So, which is fine, everybody knows it. Well, there's one book in Vegas that's doing it on a $2,200 bet. So if you're cashing $4,200, then they're putting you into the system. And a lot of people, basically they're trying to, anybody who bets anything, they're trying to keep it from going to your book, which I don't understand because why run a sports book. But that book has gotten a bad rep because of it. So
it's amazing that, we are getting off subject, but people think of Vegas and you think of this promised land, they are scared. There's no, question about it. And I think you're seeing it where a lot of the casinos just don't want the exposure, and you're seeing companies like Cantor Gaming that's coming in and taking over the sports books at different properties, right, that Venetians and, the M, and I think then they just pick up the Palms too. Yeah. So that the hotels don't want that exposure anymore.
Yeah.
To
get back on our, I understand your problem, and it's happening. It's getting worse and worse every year, but we'll see what happens in the future. But anyway, getting back to the props discussion, just a few things I want to touch on. Number one, have your work done beforehand. So when the lines come out, you're the first in line. I'll say it, there was guys down at Harrah's last year. Harrah's was the first to open props. They got crushed. I will doubt. Number one, they won't be the first to open this year. They'll probably be the last to open. The reason being is they're taking averages. For example, if, let's say there's 16 games in a season, fictitiously one guy gets 16 sacks in one game, doesn't get a sack the rest of the year. His average sacks per game is 1. They put out 1 sack for this guy. And the guys that are following it, you got to go by the mean. You got to go by the mean. You can't go by averages. They know only 1 of 16 times this guy's actually got a sack. Mm-hmm. You're not paying extra for getting more than 1 sack. It's the 1 sack. So they just got crushed on these. So keep in mind, it's the mean. It's not the averages that you want to take a look at. And try to understand what people are going to do. If New England is in the Super Bowl and New England is a popular team, they're going to score a lot of points. As soon as you see Brady's completions come out, bet it, knowing that later on in the week, that line's going nowhere but up. Mm-hmm. If you don't like it at the end of the week, buy back the other way. You get plus money, and you got a chance. You may even have a chance for a middle. It's just common sense. If it's a defensive thing, you want to go against the less yardage, that kind of thing. If a team does not stop the run, and this team is going to try to run, take the over yardage for the running back. It's all common sense. So I'm not putting out any secrets here, mm-hmm, but get ahead of the lines maker. Get ahead of the other 200 guys behind you in line, because if you're going to bet over 255 passing yards, by the time that guy at the end of the line comes back, he's betting over 275.
Well, now it wasn't with a prop, but I'll tell you just how fast things work. Sunday, I was at Caesars watching the playoff games, and when the game ended, the Green Bay Giant game, sitting there and the people I was with, Gil and Dave Essler, we're talking, what's the line going to come out? And I said 2.5 for the Giants, or for San Francisco, and I put the total at like 41, 42. The line comes out 1.5 and 45. Before I could get out of my seat, because I wanted to run and grab that 45, boom, boom.
Yep.
Immediately, 2 fast clicks, and it was down to 44, 45, 44 and a half, 44. And then from the 1.5 to 2.5, boom, boom, it's like, now, when you're talking about these props, is there a set time that they're going to do, that they do this? So
No. What you're going to run into is you're going to run around. I don't have the time to run around town, but I know guys who do.
I heard you used to. Oh, we're talking about something different.
Anyway, Good thing my wife doesn't watch these things. Anyway, there's guys that have people running around town, but the problem is they'll go into a place, say you're going to have props, you're going to have a lot of props, what day you're going to put them out, what time you're going to put them out. We run into the same problem when I was betting the futures for the college basketball, or college football this year. There's rumors going around, and nobody wants to give a true number. I've been sitting, there's been times I've been sitting at the Hilton for 3-4 hours because they told me at 1 o'clock they're coming out, and then at 2 o'clock they're not out, 3 o'clock they're not out. So you do have to put some work in here, but it really helps if you've got other guys you're working with. You're on one side of town, they're on the other side of town. People have the texting, you can get whatever you want. But there is advantages in doing that. And, they're talking about the line movement. Let's just look back at the game for this last weekend with the Saints. I knew after watching the first half of that game there's going to be a ton of money on the Saints. Saints opened up at 3. By the time I could even get my bet in, it's going up 3.5, 4, 4.5. I even saw a 6 in the second half. So you've got to be first in line on any of these bets. You just can't wait around and think about it. You've got to have that number in your head. Or, for example, these props, you've got to have those numbers on your sheets and ready. You've got to be there at Sportsbook and ready to bet those games.
Standing in line at the window. It's, the early bird gets the worm.
That's right.
I mean,
That's right.
it's a cliche, but in this case, it is true. All right. Hope that gives you guys a little bit of insight, on the props. And I don't know. I mean, you'll have all of your props already bet once they're hit. Might be, a nice thing you could actually throw it as a bonus in maybe one of your packages on the weekend, for the guys where you still see some.
Good point. Where there's still some value.
Yeah. So check that out from Bryan. I'm going to bet props, but I'm going to give props to the props man. He's been doing it a lot longer than I have because he's been out in Vegas a lot longer than I have. So I got to, it's new, but there's definitely, I saw it just in a couple of years that I'm here. They're vulnerable on these plays, and a lot of them are, especially Super Bowl, they're courtesy bets they just want to keep getting more and more action in the till.
Even at the Hilton, they'll take, I think, 2 dimes. And that's the number 1 prop place in the country. So if they're only taking 2 dimes on a bet, that there's going to be some validity there. So there's plenty of spots to pick your spot. I don't need to be betting, a TV game to make money or the Super Bowl to make money on the side and total because those are tight.
Yeah.
Plenty of other ways to make money in this business.
I don't know if I could sit and watch a Super Bowl with you with 120 prop bets.
Yeah, you don't want to.
Plus, you might eat some of my chicken wings. He's Bryan Leonard. I'm Marco D'Angelo. I hope you found this, insightful. And if you have any more questions about the props, again, go to pregamevideos.com. We'll carry on the conversation there. Ask us the questions. Ask Bryan about the props. And, let's beg him. Maybe he'll throw some of those props in his package this week. I think that'd be a nice little add-on. Sure. All right. That's it for us for the early edition of the videos this week. We'll be back at the end of the week taking a look at some weekend action, and we'll actually talk about that NFL game on Sunday. We'll highlight one of them, and Bryan will be back later in the week. We'll have Steven Nover. Hopefully he'll be able to get into the office this week. Scott Spreitzer and Vegas Runner. As always, he's Bryan Leonard. I'm Marco D'Angelo. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you on the weekend.